My eldest son, who I raised on my own, is getting married. The girl is like a model, a real beauty. But it seems beauty is all she had, as she told me.
You're a dropout and a stranger, so don't come.
I was even lied to about the wedding's venue and time. She maintained an attitude of disdain towards me for dropping out of school. Moreover, she made it seem like I was the unreasonable mother who canceled her son's wedding at the last minute. There was no way I could forgive her. While they were on their honeymoon, My name is Linda. I'm turning 57 soon. My husband passed away from cancer the year our second son was born. Overwhelmed with 2 young kids, I remember feeling utterly lost as that year ended. Since the new year, all I remember is working tirelessly day and night. My eldest son, Paul, helped immensely by taking care of his younger brother, Thomas, even when he was just a little boy. I know I made my small boys into a lot, but Paul has grown into a fine adult. It was tough when he wanted to start working right after graduating high school. Convincing him to go to college with his teachers, that is now a fond memory. After graduating, he landed a job at a major trading company and started a promising life. Apparently, Paul has a girlfriend he intends to marry. One day, he said he wanted to introduce her to me. It was a bit surprising, considering how career-focused he always was. I thought he would get married much later. Nonetheless, I was honestly happy that he wanted to start his own family soon. I hadn't been much of a mother, so I worried he might not be interested in having a family of his own. But all my worries disappeared as Paul's wedding approached. I was looking forward to meeting his partner and waited eagerly for the day of introduction. The woman who appeared was slim and stunningly beautiful, leaving me momentarily speechless. I wondered where Paul had met such a beauty. When introduced by Paul, I was shocked to learn she was an actual model. My son, working in advertising for a trading company, met her through work. Her name is Sarah, and she's 24. She seemed lively and made a good first impression, but something bothered me a bit. She looked around our home without any hesitation, seemingly checking out her future in-law's house, which didn't feel great. And something about her not even touching the coffee I offered didn't sit well with me. When Paul stepped out to take a work call, Sarah and I were left alone. It was our first meeting, and somehow we couldn't find a way to start a conversation. You're going to be my daughter once you marry Paul, so feel free to talk about anything. I tried to break the ice. To my surprise, Sarah looked shocked at my words and then said something unbelievable.
No need. I wouldn't consult someone who dropped out of school.
Her words, delivered with a clear smile, left me stunned for a moment. She seemed to mean no harm as she continued to smile. Yes, I did drop out of school, but I had my reasons. In fact, my father also passed away early. He died when I was in middle school, leaving behind myself, my younger brother, and sister. Our mother worked desperately to raise us, but there were limits. I decided to start working as soon as I graduated from middle school. Just like I tried to stop Paul, my mother desperately tried to stop me. She repeatedly pleaded for me to at least graduate from high school, but I was resolute. I don't regret it even now. I was shocked and blindsided by being mocked for my education in this situation. It was indeed a complete surprise. Huh?
Well, I have a higher education than you, so what would I gain from consulting someone beneath me?
She said with a laugh, leaving me dumbfounded. Now, the thought of her becoming my daughter-in-law was giving me a headache. Looks like you were having fun while I was away, said Paul, returning with a cheery remark. Sarah returned his comment with an elegant smile, as if nothing had happened.
She's such a lovely mother. I think we'll get along just fine,
she said. When I heard that, I nearly spit out my coffee. To my frantic self,
Are you okay?
Sarah asked with a laugh, though her eyes weren't smiling. I sighed quietly, dreading what lay ahead. My first encounter with Paul's wife-to-be, Sarah, was the worst. Sarah continued to mock me for dropping out of school multiple times. Even if she didn't mean harm, I was hurt and felt bad. The thought of her becoming part of the family weighed heavily on me. Yet because she was Paul's choice, I tried to accept her. After our first meeting, Sarah never showed her face at our house again. I checked with Paul about the wedding and it seemed to be moving forward. He had properly greeted her parents, both of whom graduated from renowned universities. Paul shared that they met during a seminar at the same university Paul graduated from. Because of this, Sarah's parents were quite fond of Paul. When mentioning the absence of a father, Sarah's dad offered to be like a real father to him. When I asked Paul about meeting both families, he awkwardly responded, "I'm good for now," he said. I couldn't understand what he meant. Apparently, the wedding venue has already been decided. Paul, busy with work, left all the preparations to Sarah. If Paul is content, it's hard for me to intervene. Well, at least he has managed the greetings with her parents, adhering to social etiquette. Though I have many reservations, I've decided to quietly observe. Over half a year since we first met, Sarah contacted me about the wedding. Invitations had already been sent out to various people. It seemed they were renting a high-end hotel venue, suggesting over 100 guests given the size. It was going to be an extravagant wedding, rarely seen nowadays. "Quite a grand wedding you're planning," I commented.
Yes, my father runs a company, so due to various connections, the guest list expanded,
she replied. Listening to Sarah, I realized something about the groom's side. Paul had left everything to Sarah. I was anxious about whether they really thought about the seating chart. "I know he's leaving everything to you, Sarah, but can you tell me who's coming from the groom's side? I don't want to be rude and not be able to recognize someone." Sarah replied with a slightly irritated tone.
"No problem,"
she said.
"Everything's taken care of perfectly, so don't worry,"
she added, her tone somewhat condescending. I felt irritated, but raising my voice to a younger woman didn't seem right. So I suppressed my urge to yell. The wedding was a month away, and I repeatedly confirmed the date and time. It's crucial, so I asked for an invitation. But Sarah said,
"We could only print the bare minimum."
She didn't send one.
"We wanted to keep costs as low as possible."
When she said that, I couldn't insist on my request. I marked the date on my calendar to not forget. Paul moved to a new house last week. The move was so sudden, and as the movers took away his belongings, I was left dumbfounded. Paul, seemingly unaware of the exact moving day, was surprised to find his stuff gone when he returned at night. He laughed it off, attributing it to Sarah's arrangements, and went off to his new house. I realized I didn't even know his new address. I thought he would contact me, but so far, nothing. On the wedding day, I got ready and headed to the hotel. Despite the festive occasion, I had words for Sarah. I felt too dismissed as a mother-in-law. In the hotel lobby, guests seemingly from the bride's side were gathering. I didn't recognize anyone, likely Sarah's side. I proceeded to the groom's waiting room, and there I was confronted with an unbelievable scene. The bride and groom sat together, surrounded by well-dressed men and women. Thinking these were Sarah's parents, I nearly had a heart attack. The couple sitting together weren't Paul and Sarah, but complete strangers. The couple looked at me curiously, understandably so. I was a complete stranger to them. In their eyes, I was a genuine intruder in that waiting room. "Sorry, I must have entered the wrong room," I muttered, my face turning red as I hurried out. Indeed, it was another wedding. A sinking feeling prompted me to check with the hotel's bridal staff. They confirmed no reservation for Paul's wedding. Sarah had lied to me about the time and date, yet I was sure today was the wedding day, but I hadn't confirmed the location and time with Paul. Right now, Paul and Sarah must be having their wedding somewhere. It was a trap set by Sarah to ensure I wouldn't attend. I hurriedly called Sarah. She answered immediately. "What's the meaning of this?" I demanded. Over the phone, Sarah sighed heavily.
"How inappropriate to disturb such an important day."
she scolded. Apparently she was alone. No one seemed to be around her. The one being unreasonable is you, Sarah. Why would you lie? I began, but she cut me off.
People who dropped out of school are strangers, so leave,
she declared. It was a shocking statement. I was infuriated, thinking about the elaborate measures she took to humiliate Paul and I. Understood, I said with resolution, but by now it was too late to make it to the wedding. My only concern was whether Paul felt awkward without me there. Ultimately, I couldn't attend and returned home. The next day, I was awakened by a call from Thomas. He works overseas and had informed us he couldn't make it back for Paul's wedding. Paul contacted me. He said he suddenly didn't show up at the wedding, he relayed. It seems Paul had contacted Thomas, and the story had twisted into me opposing Sarah and canceling the wedding last minute. Paul was seeking advice from Thomas on what to do. Sarah's machinations were impressive, to say the least. I explained the truth to Thomas. I told him how Sarah gave me false information preventing me from attending. At first, Thomas seemed to think I was making excuses, but as I recounted Sarah's attitude during her first visit, he began to believe me. So Paul doesn't know about this? He asked. He must believe I canceled last minute. I replied, tears of frustration brimming. You're not going to let this go, right? Thomas was trying to encourage me. Right, this wasn't the time for tears. I wanted to clear up Paul's misunderstanding, and my tears of frustration receded. I tried contacting Paul, but he was unreachable, likely on his honeymoon. I decided to confront Sarah's parents directly. I visited them, and they greeted me with suspicion. As we talked, it was clear they believed I opposed the marriage and canceled last minute. I began by clearing up this misunderstanding. I wasn't sure they would believe me, but I had to explain everything. Initially, they didn't believe me at all. However, I had one last ace up my sleeve. I had recorded my conversation with Sarah. Playing it might be harsh, but if they wouldn't believe me, I had no choice. I took out my phone and played the voice memo. Sarah's harsh words to me echoed from the phone. I understand how you would want to believe in Sarah. I'm a mother too, but please understand how it feels to be barred from my own son's wedding, I implored. Sarah's parents hung their heads at my words, yet no apology came. I remembered then. They raised Sarah, shaping her into who she is, including her disdain for my dropout status. Understood. In front of the silent couple, I slid my business card across. Sarah's father's eyes widened as he checked the card, looking back and forth between it and me. I'll do whatever it takes. Paul returned a week later from his honeymoon. No word from him in the meantime. I worried he might be brainwashed by Sarah, but that was needless worry. Hearing the front door open, I stepped out of the living room to find Paul walking in. Upon seeing me, he rushed over to apologize. Mom, I'm sorry, I didn't realize anything. As soon as the newlyweds returned from their honeymoon to their new home, Sarah's parents came visiting. Without a moment to unpack, Sarah was cornered by her father Joseph. What are you doing? And Paul, clueless, was shocked when Joseph burst in, yelling at Sarah. Sarah flinched momentarily at her father's fury, but being strong-willed, she quickly retorted, and a parent-child quarrel ensued. Your actions are ruining our company, he bellowed, throwing my business card at Sarah. She picked it up, turning pale as she read my title. Unbeknownst to her, I was the president of one of her father's key business clients. Despite dropping out, I worked hard and rose to become a respected president. Moreover, her father's company was a subcontractor to mine. I had pulled all contracts 3 days prior. Sarah's father runs a small enterprise distributing parts, with over 80% of its orders coming from our company. His agitation was understandable. Go apologize to Linda now, he demanded, but Sarah stood firm, apparently refusing.
I don't understand why I have to apologize to someone like her,
she said. That was the moment Paul realized the truth. Reflecting, he noticed many oddities in Sarah's behavior. He apologized to me for blindly believing Sarah's story about my absence on the wedding day. Mom, I forgot you'd never neglect me. I'm really sorry. It's okay as long as you understand, but I'm not revoking my orders for the company. I don't want to do business with someone who discriminates based on education, I stated. Paul nodded in agreement. Then he declared the marriage over. The disgraceful rumor of a divorce right after returning from a honeymoon spread quickly. Paul apologized to the attendees and reimbursed the gifts received from his side of guests at his own expense. Apparently, Sarah's side did not respond at all. When guests from her side demanded reimbursements, she apparently caused a scene. The divorce was not agreed upon easily, and eventually it went to lawyers. The recording I had seemed to be the decisive evidence in the divorce proceedings. Paul laughed, saying it was harder than getting married, and mentioned that Sarah's father's company was now on the brink of bankruptcy. She tried returning to modeling, but her reputation was too tarnished for any agency to hire her. Lately, she's been seen drunk, still cursing the dropout old lady, me. Clearly, there are no signs of remorse. Maybe a little more downfall would bring some sense of reflection. Paul, back at home, suggested renovating the old house. It seems he has no immediate plans to marry again. I'll focus on my career just like you, Mom, he said, making me feel happy. I felt relieved that I had played both parental roles well. Just be more careful when choosing a partner next time, was my only advice. Paul nodded, looking a bit sheepish.